On today's PMEA's Take Note podcast, we are concluding our series where we're talking to all of the 2024 PMEA All-State Festival conductors on today's PMEA's Take Note podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of PMEA's Take Note podcast. I am Mark Despotakis, and on this edition, we are concluding our series where we are talking with all-state guest conductors. So today we're talking to two. We're talking to the orchestra conductor, Scott Laird. We're going to talk to him in just a second, and then a little bit later, we're going to be talking to Dr. Chris Jackson, the all-state chorus conductor. So let's jump right into this. It is my pleasure to welcome the 2024 All-State conductor, Scott Laird, talk to us. Scott, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're really looking forward to seeing you in Erie in a couple weeks. So let's start with, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you. Give us the thumbnail sketch.
Sure, I'll give you the quick one. I'm a native of Indiana, Pennsylvania. I grew up in the 60s and 70s in town, and was fortunate enough to be around the university a lot and the string teachers there. So I began my violin instruction at the age of 6 with then Heidi Peterson, who was a graduate student at IUP, and eventually studied with Gloria Johnson, who was a local Suzuki teacher. And then for many years studied with Professor Delight Malitsky at IUP. I got a music education degree at IUP and taught my first 6 years in Palmyra, Pennsylvania, over near Hershey. And during that time, I also came back to IUP and got a master's in violin performance. And as a result of my teaching and my life there, I had an opportunity to take a job in the Maryland area at a STEM school at Eleanor Roosevelt High School, which is a science and technology magnet school in Prince George's County, Maryland, right out of Washington, D.C. I spent 9 years there, had a great experience there. And then from there, had an opportunity to take this experience with great music programs within the context of a STEM school to the North Carolina School of Science and Math in Durham, North Carolina, where I have been since 2001. So we've been around there for a long time. And in my time there, we have developed the orchestra program. And then eventually I became chair of fine arts for the School of Science and Math. So I oversee all music, drama, and visual arts programs at the school and still conduct the orchestra at our Durham campus. About 2 years ago, we opened up a second campus in Morganton, North Carolina. And I've had the great pleasure of being a big part of opening a brand new school and hiring faculty for that school. So right now I'm splitting my time between Durham, North Carolina and Morganton, North Carolina, as we continue to the process, sort of an ongoing process of opening up that school. But through all of that, I've been an active guest conductor, and I spend a lot of time doing that type of event. I just did Colorado's All-State Philharmonic Orchestra last weekend, so I'm still coming off the road from that event, and I'm really looking forward to doing the PMEA event this year.
Yeah, so obviously you're very well suited to handle Pennsylvania's All-State Orchestra. So let's talk a little bit about the musical program that you've selected. Tell us about some of the highlights.
Yeah, for sure. There are 3 pieces on the program, really 4 movements. We're going to start off with an overture, the overture to School for Scandal by Samuel Barber. Felt like an appropriate selection because of Barber's affiliation with Eastern Pennsylvania, Westchester specifically. It's a really cool, angsty piece of music that is really challenging technically, but also super satisfying. So, and Barber really is one of my favorite composers. So that felt like a great selection to open up our program. We have Iridium by Jack Stamp. So that's my nod to Western Pennsylvania and IUP. More than likely, our wind players will be familiar with Jack Stamp. I know all of the teachers are familiar with Jack's compositions for wind band. He's been very popular over the years in Pennsylvania for obvious reasons, the regional affiliation and just his work. And Jack and I remain friends to this day. This is really his only work for full orchestra. And I discovered this work pretty much immediately when it was published. I was so excited to see it, and it's become a staple of my repertoire as a conductor. It gives a great workout to the percussion section. The winds get lots of opportunities to show their skills, and it's a real a real spectacular sort of nod to Pennsylvania. It's got some personal interest for me, which I'll share with the students, and actually some of that is written in the letter that I wrote to the students as well. So I'll invite them to check that out, but I'll talk about that a little bit more personally. And it just felt like a good piece to program for the Pennsylvania All-State. Then we're finishing up with Florence Price's Symphony Number 3. Initially, the fourth movement of that symphony was the only movement that I was thinking of doing. It's a real celebratory compound meter piece that feels like a great ender to me. It's a great finale to the symphony. And as I was working with the PMEA executives, we kind of felt like we needed one more little thing, and so we decided to program the first movement of the symphony as well. So I really love doing the outer movements of a symphony, particularly in an all-state setting, and I think it'll be perfect. The first movement is full of melancholy and sort of has some angst associated with it, and then the fourth movement is really celebratory throughout. So it's a nice balance for the symphony. That's our program.
So let's talk about the students. So you're bringing together these students from all over the state for this kind of like, it's truly a once in a lifetime thing, right? Because you never perform with this specific group again. So what are you hoping students will get out of the experience of being in this specific ensemble?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say I heard years ago, and I really try to live this out, that when I'm in front of an ensemble, no matter what that ensemble is, it's my opportunity to share my secrets, and that's what I plan to do. You know, we have a lot of time, but it's not a lot of time. You know, it's a weekend, and what I would aspire to is to be able to share the secrets that I have learned over the course of 37-year career at this point, about ensemble playing, about how I think about music making. My goal would be that every student would have an enlightening ensemble experience. You know, ensemble is my specialty. It's how do we bring people together that don't know each other in a kind of intense and short period of time, and then walk away as a truly cohesive musical group. In my opinion, great ensemble starts with a strong trust that develops over the course of the weekend. It doesn't happen right on the very first rehearsal, but the goal is that occurs, and that by the end, the ensemble trusts me and I trust the ensemble to do the things that we talk about over the course of the weekend. Another little piece of it for me, as their conductor, is that my musical background is pretty diverse. Not only is my background in conducting and the classical repertoire, but I also am an improviser on the violin, and I've spent a lot of time working in non-classical settings as a musician as well. So my goal is always to kind of weave those two experiences together as a conductor, so that perhaps my secrets that I'm sharing are unique to other conductors that the students have worked with in the past. I've been told that's the case, and I very much work for it to not be sort of a ho-hum, oh, we've been here before kind of an experience for the students. I commit to sharing the things that I've learned from the perspective of my life and my musical experience.
So I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'm always curious as a guest conductor, like, what is it like for you then to come into this situation? Because I think the students have nerves coming into a situation like this. But what is it like for as a guest conductor, for you to come in and stand in front of this type of an ensemble?
Well, I love this question, and I wasn't going to answer it quite this way, but I'm going to, because I just had this conversation in Colorado with a colleague. I think anybody that's walking into this situation, I know this is the case for me, that there are some moments before we get started of kind of anxiety and you know people use the term imposter syndrome a lot today. If you don't have a little bit of that anxiety walking in, you probably don't care enough. And I always have a little bit of that anxiety. But what I find as a guest conductor in an all-state setting is we get about 10 minutes into the rehearsal, and we've started adjusting things and talking about music and doing the things that we do. And I find that this is home base for me. It's the place that I frankly am most comfortable. And one of the great things about doing this for me is that I definitely get into what, again, people call today sort of a flow state. And an 8 to 10 hour day of rehearsals for me is gone before it ever sort of starts in my mind. It just happens so fast. I will share that I participated in this group in 1983 when I was a senior in high school. And that was a formative experience, as were all of the district and regional orchestras that I participated in. I knew at every single one of these events that the guy standing at the front probably had the best job in the world, and I wanted to do it. So from the time that I was probably 16 years old or even younger when I did my first district orchestra, all the way to my senior year in high school when I was in All-State Orchestra and eventually All Eastern Orchestra in Boston, I knew that I wanted to be the guy that got a chance to form that ensemble and do the work that was being done there. In 1983, I will share, Vaclav Nelibel was the guest conductor, and Nelibel was a well-known composer of what I would call advanced pedagogical music at the time. So there were lots of his pieces that I had played in orchestras from the time I was in middle school to high school, and I knew who he was very well. And that was, a really formative experience for me. And then after I got out of college and I was teaching in Palmyra, Pennsylvania, I actually hosted the All-State Orchestra in 1990, which was a huge organizational job. That wasn't before we had personal computers and spreadsheets and ways to organize, but we were just at the very front end of it. And I was an early adopter of some of that technology. And I'm sure I used some of that technology to prepare for it. But that was one of the early tests of leadership in my young career in 1990, as I started teaching in the winter of 1987. So I was still pretty young. In fact, I got married the weekend before that All-State Orchestra, and the very next weekend I hosted All-State Orchestra. It was again a big test. There was a lot going on in my life, but it's an absolute thrill, and I will not be shy about telling everyone that conducting Pennsylvania's All-State Orchestra has been a goal of mine. It's been an aspiration of mine since probably 1983. And while I've conducted lots of other all-states around the country, I am particularly honored to have the opportunity to do this work in April. And I really want it to be a great event for everybody, like it was for me when I was in high school.
Oh, that's so cool. I love all the stages, the check boxes along the way, right?
Yeah.
And then we're going to check another one here for you in just a few weeks. Very, very cool. All right. So for the students watching, let's have you answer this question then. What is the one thing that you want the students to know about you before they arrive for that first rehearsal and that first downbeat?
Yeah. I think that the most important thing that I want students to know about me is that I'm a nice guy. I try to lead an ensemble with friendship rather than with fear. I want folks to feel like they can take some musical risks as part of the weekend. And while the feedback that I give will we'll have things to learn, right? That we'll have things to learn as we go. But the criticism is intended from a position of being constructive, not destructive. I believe very strongly that strong communities made up of people who trust each other are the ones that make the best musical ensembles, and ultimately they create the best ensemble music. So we're going to work hard to kind of make friends early and to gain a real kind of feel for who each other are. I like the notion that the first rehearsal is all about introducing ourselves to each other. I think by a half an hour in or an hour in, they're gonna figure me out a little bit. They're gonna know what I'm like as a conductor, and I'm gonna work really hard to figure out who they are, both individually and collectively, because that'll come together in that first little bit. It's important for me to know that the students know that I have lived the PMEA experience, and I'm very proud of it. And it was formative for me. It really still to this day is a big piece of who I am as a musician, as an educator, and as a conductor. And the other, I'm gonna give you another one. You didn't ask for
Okay.
two, but I'll give you another one. And the other one is that my work at the North Carolina School of Science and Math really allows me to work with students like them every day. I'll sometime during the weekend, I'll tell them more about my school. They can certainly look it up online, but our school is comprised of students from across the state of North Carolina that are academically motivated and and interested in really being good at the things they pursue. And so the orchestra is like that. It's an orchestra of kids that are, and they actually live away from home. They live at our school on a full scholarship for their junior and senior year. And so when I walk into rehearsal at my school every day, while they're not an all-state orchestra, certainly they're an orchestra of human beings that are a lot like the people that find themselves at all-state orchestra and PMEA events. So it's a familiar type of community to me, and I think that really helps me to be well suited for these kind of events. And so if we have those two things, that this is a type of ensemble that I'm pretty comfortable with because of my daily work, and in the end, I'm a nice guy who really aspires to developing strong ensemble relationships, and great music will happen as a result. We'll be set up for success without a doubt.
Well, fantastic. We look forward to you being with us here in just a couple weeks now in Erie. Scott Laird, thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure today. I can't wait till our first rehearsal and getting back up home to Western Pennsylvania. It's going to be a great weekend.
We'll see you in Erie.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right, and with us now is Chris Jackson, who will be the guest conductor for the All-State Chorus. Chris, thanks for joining us.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thanks, Mark.
So we're going to take some time to get to know you and let the students get to know a little bit about what they can expect. So let's do the little baselining here first.
Sure.
Let's give the thumbnail sketch of who you are for people who may not know about you, your background, who you are. What would you want people to know about you?
Well, I grew up in Oklahoma, and I say that because I've actually found Pennsylvania to be a really good sort of home. I feel at home in Pennsylvania, and I've lived here for the last 11 years. But part of the way I grew up was this balance of living in really rural areas, and then also my hometown was a college town. So like I got a good mix of both worlds, and I've lived in different areas of Pennsylvania. I used to live in Williamsport, which is a larger town in a rural area. And so I worked with a lot of rural populations there. And now I live in Allentown in southeastern Pennsylvania, and it's much more urban, So I've experienced Pennsylvania and all of the students and teachers in these different areas of Pennsylvania. And I was really surprised at how at home I feel here. So it's an honor to be conducting the All-State Choir. I really respect all the teachers that are doing this hard work, and all the students, obviously, who have made it up to this point. But I also feel a connection to a lot of the people from Pennsylvania, and that's kind of why it's such an honor to stand up and make music with people. At this point, I used to teach college. I taught for 11 years. I also taught high school and middle school choir. But now I am the director of the Bach Choir of Bethlehem, which is the oldest Bach choir in the United States. And I get to work with people from grade 6 all the way up until people still sing with us in their 80s. We do a lot of Bach. We do other music too, but it's a really beautiful job. And if any students find themselves in the Lehigh Valley area, either now or in the future, they should consider looking us up and being a part of the organization, because it's really good work. So that's kind of a general overview of who I am. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Very cool. So yeah, you are definitely adequately prepared, for sure, for doing the All-State course. So some people may have seen in the corner of the screen there's a cat involved. So I
Yeah.
think it is crucial that we know some information about the cat.
Oh yeah. So this is Nyx, nickname Bear. She looks like a little black bear sometimes, but
Okay.
she's my work buddy. Anytime I'm in this chair working, which is frequently, she has to be here. I am an animal person. I don't have enough time to take great care of dogs, so I devote as much time as I can to my two cats. But
Love it.
yeah.
Love it. Very cool. Awesome. All right. So let's get into kind of the meat of some things. So let's talk about the musical program that you've selected. Talk us through some of the highlights about some of the All-State chorus music we'll hear this year.
Sure. I mean, some people pick themes when they're trying to organize a concert, and I've done that before, and it works really well. But what I wanted to share with people this year is great poetry. So all of the pieces on the program, really, I'm drawn to the poetry in it, and that's why choral music is is such a gift. I love orchestral music as well. That was actually my first passion. But the longer I spent in the world of choral music, the more I became in awe of this relationship between text and music, and that hopefully, the act of adding music to something, voices, and having people sing it together brings something more out of the poetry than if it was just a poem itself. And so I really focused on picking pieces with great text, and also almost every piece on the program was written in the last 50 years. So, I could have gone back in time and said, this music and these composers are really great for you to know, and I want to give you that experience. But with such a talented group of musicians, I also wanted to pick things that felt current and relevant, um, and challenging. So it is a challenging program. I People will often warn the All-State director and say things like, be careful, you don't have a lot of time, but also there's not a whole lot more for the students to audition for afterwards. So sometimes they, are a little relaxed on their preparation. But if we've got all this talent in the room, why not see how far we can push ourselves to create an artistic product, and to choose repertoire that is challenging but rewarding at the same time. So I picked a challenging program. It feels really relevant. And I guess two pieces that I would highlight are It's a Long Way by Nell Shaw Cohen and I Conquer the World with Words by Jonathan Woody. These pieces were both written during the pandemic, when online learning was really all many of us were doing. And they wrote those pieces during that time. And so you can feel a little bit of the influence of the sort of isolation that a lot of people felt, or maybe some optimism, or, there were other things going on in our world at the same time that were big social events in the United States. And so some of that influenced their work as well. Um, and I'm really, really happy to be featuring those two pieces in particular.
All right. Yeah. Really interesting. Yeah. The pandemic was a strange time for all of us. So to do something really that's that contemporary from just a few years ago will be real fascinating to hear those pieces. So let's talk about the students. They're coming from all over the state. These are the highest levels in their schools. What are you hoping that they will get out of the experience specifically of being in the All-State chorus?
There's so many things. One of the reasons I chose to do music, to make a life in music, is because it never stops. you never stop growing. And these students have made it to a really high level already. But I really look forward to sharing with them the ways that they can grow as people and musicians through this experience, but also to help prepare them, to keep their eyes open in the future. Um, Help show them other ways they might be able to grow, even not just around me, but by how they interact with music for the rest of their lives. So a lot of that is sharing my passion, and my interest in music, what I find interesting, asking them what they find interesting, and feeding that interest. So that's part of what I want to do, and also, I mean, one of the reasons that we're choral musicians is because we need that communal experience, and this will probably be the case for many people, but I was in the Oklahoma All-State Choir only my senior year. I only made it my senior year, and it turns out that I am still friends with some people who were in that same choir, and I hope that, the all-state choir members find friends, find lifelong friends, and people who are going to, support them as individuals, but also be there to challenge them and push them as musicians, and people. So it's this really magnificent opportunity, to build for the future, while we're there making great music in the present. Yeah.
Yeah, that is such a fascinating point that you make, that I think it's really important for the students to always realize the value in being there, and the connections that you will make, and the connections you don't realize you make. And just I'll just tell a real quick anecdote about that. I was talking this weekend. I teach with the high school marching band. I was talking with this weekend with the band director, who I have known for 15 years or more in professional capacity.
Yeah.
And just in conversation, we discovered we were in the same district band all those many years ago, and we didn't know each other at that point. And we're like, yeah, do you remember this happened there? Do you remember this happened there? So you were truly making these lifelong memories when you were part of festivals like this. So I really appreciate that you note that, and note the importance of that.
Absolutely. And if I were to add one other thing, you know, we talk all the time about it. Sorry, at least I think people like you and me talk about how the musical world is really small. And, basically what we're saying is there's always a chance you're going to run into somebody. And I've done some regional and district festivals in Pennsylvania before, and I've run into students at conferences, 5, 8, 10 years later after I was their director at an honor choir festival. And I really don't forget faces. So the oddest story is that I was at a conference in Cincinnati, and I was at a place eating dinner, and I looked over at another table, and I just knew that I had seen this person before, and lo and behold, he came up to me, uh, and we recognized each other from a festival, where I was the director. And he's, by now he must have graduated with his undergraduate degree from Cincinnati Conservatory, but we'll run into each other, and that's the really beautiful thing, is that we get to create this lifelong community as well. And that's why, one of the reasons why I do music.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about the why. Then let's flip this. We talk about what the students get out of it, but I'm always curious for guest conductors. What is it like for you to stand before such a high level honors ensemble? What is that experience like for you as a guest conductor?
It is, there are some humbling aspects to it, because when I look out at all of those students and I think of the effort that they put in to get there, the effort that their teachers have made to help get them there, the support they may have had in one way or another from friends or family, like I see each individual as the culmination of a lot of time spent in the pursuit of excellence, or maybe beauty, right? Because we do this thing, this choral music, usually, for some really strong personal reasons. So it's really humbling to look out and think that every individual has a story, and every individual has struggled with certain things, succeeded, failed, um, and that we're all there at the same time to try and find beauty or truth, and experience that all together as a collective. So those are the sorts of things that enter into my head. I mean, it is really astounding. I told you I only made All-State my senior year of high school. So, when I'm there and I see people who made it every year that they could, I wonder what their futures are going to be like. But also, that's not an indication of future success. Um, Really, you end up learning as a musician that you just have to keep going back to it day after day in order to be successful. And just because you succeeded a year ago doesn't mean that you're going to keep growing. So there's that really large mix of things. And honestly, anytime, and this, anytime you teach and you are genuinely connecting with people or vulnerable, or you encourage connection and vulnerability, you end up learning as the teacher. So I get to connect, hopefully, with a lot of people while I'm there, and those sorts of connections end up changing me as a musician and as a teacher. And I mean, that's my favorite part.
Yeah, I love that. It speaks to the power of music, what you're saying, but it also just speaks to something I just think is so crucial, is just this idea of lifelong learning. And
Totally.
the teacher is always learning, or at least they should be. So, all right, so let's end with this one then. What is the one thing you would want students to know about you before they arrive in Erie for that first rehearsal?
It's really hard. I'll give a very quick one and then a longer one.
Okay.
Because I can't just pick one. The first is that I am still a professional choral singer, and I want them to know that, but about me, but partially it's so that they know that this is a job that you can have. Even if you don't do it full time, you can get paid to sing in professional choirs. So just keep that in mind. If choral music is something that you love, you can keep doing it and get paid for it. So just kind of full stop there. And then the other thing is that music is so personally important to me. I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I hadn't sort of stumbled into music. It kind of taught me how to learn other subjects. It kept me from being lonely. Like everything that I feel like I've succeeded in life that wasn't musical, I feel like I was able to transfer over from music. And so music has this profound place of personal importance, and I believe that it can be important to everyone, and whatever that means, it's unique to each person, but that I always try to provide opportunities for people to engage with the reasons, the personal reasons that music is important or beneficial to their life. And they'll see that in my teaching and my conducting. I mean, that's how I interact with people. So I think that's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I think the students are going to get a great experience from meeting you and working with you, and we all look forward to seeing what shakes out of it and what the concert looks like. So, Dr. Christopher Jackson, thank you for joining us, and we will see you in just a few short weeks in Erie.
I can't wait. Mark, thank you. Thanks a ton.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And thank you all for being here on this edition of PMEA's Take Note podcast. We want to thank our sponsor, the Grove City College Department of Music. We'll see you next time.